He's still breathing, someone help me pull him out. The words tore out of Allara Chen before she could stop them, raw and desperate, swallowed almost immediately by the shriek of metal twisting against concrete and the roar of flames climbing the undercarriage of the luxury sedan. Cold November rain hammered the Miami streets at 11:56 p.m., neon signs from the closed diner 3 blocks away bleeding red and blue across the wet pavement, casting everything in a sickly, pulsing glow. Smoke choked the air, burning rubber, gasoline, something chemical and choking that coated her throat. Her hands gripped the door frame of the crushed vehicle, palms slick with rain and something warmer. Blood. She yanked harder, her $8 thrift store jacket soaked through, rain mixing with the red on her skin as she dragged the unconscious man in the expensive tailored suit onto the sidewalk. His face was cut across the cheekbone, breathing shallow but steady, his white dress shirt torn open to reveal a chest decorated with a single gold chain that probably cost more than everything she owned, everything she had ever owned, everything she would own in the next 5 years. She did not know his name. She did not know that this man, sprawled unconscious on cold wet concrete, was Lucian Caruso, 6'2", muscular shoulders, dark eyes that could freeze blood in a vein, a scar running from temple to jaw like a blade drawn across his face. She did not know he was 34 years old and the most feared Mafia boss in the country, a man who built an empire on vengeance after watching his own father murdered in front of him when he was 16 years old. She did not know that his cashmere coat, now soaked and muddy, cost more than her annual salary. She did not know that somewhere across Miami, in a penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay, 12 men in black suits were about to receive a phone call that would change everything. She only knew that someone was dying and she could not walk away. The sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Allara pressed her fingers against the side of his neck, the pulse was there, steady and strong, a rhythm that meant life, meant hope, meant that she had pulled him from the burning car in time. She checked his breathing. Shallow but present. The rain fell harder, and in the distance, red and blue lights began to paint the darkness. Then she ran. She disappeared into the November night like a ghost, her wet footprints the only evidence she had ever been there at all, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She ran because asking questions was dangerous. She ran because people like her did not stay at accident scenes. She ran because she had $5 in her pocket and one meal left to get her through to Friday, and if the police asked questions, if they took her statement, if they kept her there even 1 hour longer, she would lose her shift at the diner, and that shift meant food for Noah. The rain swallowed her whole. 12 hours earlier, before the fire, before the sirens, before the man in the expensive suit, Allara Chen lay in darkness. Not the darkness of night, the darkness of a converted closet that the Blackwell family generously called her room, a space so small that when she lay on the single cot, her toes touched one wall and her head touched the other. There was no window. The air was stale and cold, and smelled like the cleaning supplies stored on the shelf above her pillow. She was awake. She had not slept. The clock on the wall of the kitchen, visible through the crack in her door if she craned her neck, read 3:19 a.m. Her eyes had snapped open at exactly 3 o'clock, the way they did every morning, her body trained by years of poverty to wake before alarm clocks, to count the minutes until she had to move. She lay still, listening to the house around her. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, Evelyn Blackwell was asleep, the woman she worked for, the woman whose son she loved more than her own breath, the woman who had never once asked Allara's first name correctly. Downstairs, in the dark kitchen, there was a plate from last night's dinner. She had eaten nothing. Her hands trembled slightly as she remembered the food on that plate: roasted chicken, vegetables glistening with butter, a roll so soft it might have been made of clouds. She had carried it to the sink, emptied it, washed the plate, and placed it in the cabinet. That food was not for her. That food never was. In the closet that was her room, Allara sat up slowly and reached under her pillow. Her wallet was there, worn leather cracking at the edges. She opened it with the reverence of someone handling something sacred. $5. That was all. $5 to last until her next paycheck, which would arrive on Friday, 7 days away. 7 days. She had done this calculation before, she did it every morning. $5 divided by 7 days was less than $1 a day. She could buy a single banana from the grocery store on Monday, maybe a loaf of bread on Wednesday if the older bread was on sale. Noah ate at the Blackwell house. She could survive on scraps. She had survived on less. The foreclosure notice was still taped to the inside of her closet door, and even in the darkness, she could see it. She had read it so many times that the words had burned themselves into her brain, and even when she closed her eyes, she saw them. Final notice. 30 days to vacate. The basement apartment she rented from Robert Hargrove, a man in his 60s with wet eyes and wet hands, was being foreclosed. The bank had given her the news last month. Hargrove had given her his own news shortly after, a news that made her skin crawl. "You could stay," he had said, his voice like oil, slick and dark. "If you were nice to me. If you showed me that you were grateful." She had not been nice. She had taken her meager possessions and begun searching for another place, any place, something in her price range, which meant something under $300 a month. Miami did not have such places. Not for her. She pulled on the black pants and white shirt that was her uniform, the clothes she wore to care for Noah and maintain the Blackwell household. The shirt was clean but thin, worn soft from washing. She fastened it carefully, then pulled her hair back into a bun. Her reflection in the small mirror above her single shelf showed her a woman who was 26 years old but looked 40. Hollowed eyes. A mouth that had learned not to smile. Cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. She touched the small gold locket around her neck, the only thing of value she owned, the only thing that had belonged to her mother. Inside was a photo smaller than a postage stamp, a woman with the same dark eyes, the same determined chin, a woman who had worked 2 jobs and still died at 38 from a heart that simply stopped. Allara was 26. She did her math every morning. If her mother's heart was weak, if this ran in her blood, she had maybe a dozen years left. 12 years to build something. 12 years to make sure Noah would not be alone. She left her closet and moved through the dark house like a shadow. The Blackwell mansion was beautiful in a way that made her ache, hardwood floors that gleamed like mirrors, walls the color of cream, furniture that looked like it belonged in magazines. The art on the walls probably cost more than she would earn in her entire lifetime. She moved through it without touching anything, without looking directly at it, as though she could be invisible if she tried hard enough. In the kitchen, she made Noah's lunch. Small hands had drawn a picture yesterday, a picture of her and him holding hands under a yellow sun. She had kept it in her pocket. She kept everything he made in her pocket, close to her heart, a collection of proof that she mattered to someone, that someone loved her. She had no idea that in exactly 6 hours and 47 minutes, her life was going to change completely. Across the city, in a penthouse on the 47th floor of a building that touched the sky, Lucian Caruso sat in his office surrounded by dark wood and darker silence. The city spread out below him like a thing he owned, streetlights and car lights and human lives all arranged in patterns he could read like a language. He was reading numbers on a computer screen, money flowing in and out of accounts, shipments arriving at the port, men in the hospital, men in the ground, when his phone buzzed. Vinny, his oldest lieutenant, stood in the doorway. Vinny was 52 years old, built like a cement block, his suit black and tailored, his tie the silver of a bullet. "Trouble," Vinny said quietly. Lucian did not look away from the screen. "Where?" "Harborview District." "Your car." That got his attention. Lucian turned slowly, and Vinny felt the weight of his gaze the way you feel the weight of a gun barrel. Lucian's eyes were dark, not brown, but the black of a moonless sky, and they moved like a calculator, processing, assessing, computing consequences. "How bad?" Lucian said. "Total loss. Fire took it completely." "The driver?" Vinny hesitated. This hesitation meant something. This hesitation meant a story he did not know yet. "That's the strange part," Vinny said quietly. "The fire department found him on the pavement. Someone pulled him out. Someone dragged him from the car before the fire spread to the gas tank." Lucian stood. He was 6'2", and he moved like a general surveying a battlefield, each step deliberate, each breath controlled. He wore a white shirt open at the collar, and the gold chain around his neck caught the light from the city below. The scar on his face, from temple to jaw, was pale against his olive skin, a reminder of what happened to men who were not careful. "Who?" he said. "We don't know." Whoever it was, they were gone before the fire department arrived. No witnesses got a good look. Just footprints in the rain, heading west toward the diner district. Lucian looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, someone had touched him. Someone had put their hands on him and chosen to save him instead of letting him burn. In this city, in this life, kindness was a weapon you could not afford to carry. Kindness got you killed. And yet, "Find them," he said quietly. He did not know that he was looking for a woman with $5 in her pocket and a heart that could not refuse a dying stranger. He did not know that in 9 days, Noah's surgery was due, and his mother would make a phone call to a lawyer to discuss papers that would change everything. He did not know that the clock was counting down to a moment when darkness and light would collide, and one of them would have to break. Outside the penthouse, the November rain fell on Miami, and in a converted closet in a basement apartment that was not hers for much longer, Allara Chen finished packing Noah's lunch and whispered a prayer to a god she was not sure was listening anymore. The alarm on Allara Chen's phone buzzed at 5:19 in the morning, a sound like an insect trapped in a tin can. She opened her eyes in the darkness of her converted closet, a space 4 feet wide with no window, just the hum of the house's old pipes and the muffled sound of Miami traffic 3 blocks away. Her alarm was set 7 minutes early because she needed those 7 minutes to remember how to breathe, how to pretend that today would be different from yesterday, that somehow the numbers would change. She sat up on her twin mattress, her back against the cold concrete wall, and reached for her wallet on the plastic crate that served as her nightstand. 5 single-dollar bills. She counted them again, touching each one like it might multiply. $5. That was what remained after she had sent everything else to her sister in Sacramento for Noah's medical fund. The $85,000 surgery. 12 days away. 144 hours until the valve replacement that would save his life or end it. Allara folded the bills back into the worn leather wallet and stood. She was 28 years old but looked 40 in the mirror, her face hollowed by 2 years of this life, her eyes the color of dark water with something drowning at the bottom. She splashed cold water on her face from the bathroom sink in the hallway, careful not to wake anyone, and dressed in the gray maid's uniform that hung on a hook behind her bedroom door. The fabric was soft from 100 washings, but the seams were starting to fray. Noah's room was on the 2nd floor, a bright space with blue walls and a window that faced east toward the coming dawn. She found him still asleep, his small chest rising and falling with the soft sound of his breathing. 6 years old. Born with a defect that no amount of love could fix, only surgery could. She checked his oxygen levels, the little clip on his finger read 92%. Yesterday it had been 94. The number was dropping like a stone down a well. "Good morning, my brave boy," she whispered, brushing his dark hair back from his forehead. "Time to wake up." His eyes opened slowly, unfocused, and then he smiled at her. That smile was worth more than $85,000. It was worth everything she did not have. She helped him sit up, gave him his morning medications, 3 pills and a liquid that tasted like cherry and made him grimace. She helped him dress in clothes soft enough not to irritate his sensitive skin and led him downstairs to the kitchen. The Blackwell mansion was a 5-story monument to money, with crown molding and marble floors and art on the walls that cost more than she would earn in a lifetime. It was also a beautiful prison, and she was the invisible woman who kept it running. Allara made Noah breakfast, oatmeal with cinnamon and a soft-boiled egg, orange juice, a banana cut into perfect half-moons. She cut his food into smaller pieces now because chewing tired him. His heartbeat was visible sometimes through his thin chest, a flutter like a bird trapped in a cage. She sat beside him at the kitchen table, her hand on his back, watching him eat. "Viv, I made a drawing," Noah said, his mouth full of oatmeal. "It's a superhero. His name is Strength Man. He has a heart that is golden and it makes him brave." "That sounds amazing," Allara said, and she meant it with every fractured piece of her heart. "I want to see it." After school, I'll show you. He took another bite. Will you be there when I come home? The question landed like a knife through her ribs. Would she? That depended on whether Evelyn Blackwell decided to keep her, whether Robert Hargrove decided to evict her, whether the gods decided to show mercy or continue this slow torture. But she smiled at him instead. Always, she promised, a lie that felt like a prayer. The sound of footsteps on the marble staircase came at 6:45. Evelyn Blackwell descended like a woman descending into a room full of people waiting to applaud her. She was 43, expensively maintained, with ash-blonde hair and eyes the color of winter. She wore a Chanel jacket that cost more than everything Allara owned. Her face arranged itself into a smile when she saw Noah, but that smile evaporated when she glanced at his breakfast plate. "You're feeding him too much," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with public television sweetness that curdled the moment she turned away. "Do you want to kill my son? Sugar before school? Are you trying to spike his blood pressure?" Allara said nothing. Saying nothing was survival. "He needs protein." "Not this slop," Evelyn continued, moving to the counter where she poured herself a coffee that cost $18 a pound. "And his medication. Did you give him his medication?" "Yes, at 5:55. Don't lie to me. I can see it in your face when you lie." Evelyn turned, her eyes scanning Allara like a weapon scanning for targets. "You have that guilty look. That pathetic, poor look." Noah set down his spoon. His hand had started trembling slightly, a sign that his body was reaching its limits for the day. Allara placed her hand over his, grounding him, anchoring him to something steady. "His oxygen levels are at 92%, Allara said quietly. "They were 94 yesterday. We should monitor him closely." Evelyn waved her hand like she was swatting away a mosquito. "The doctor said he was fine. I'm not paying you to become a medical expert. I'm paying you to keep him fed and quiet until I can afford the surgery." She paused, and something cruel flickered behind her eyes. "Though at the rate you're going, we might not need the surgery. He might just solve the problem for us naturally." The room became a vacuum where no sound existed. Noah's hand squeezed Alara's fingers. She looked down at his face, saw the understanding there, the 6-year-old's terrible comprehension that his own mother wanted him to disappear. Allara pulled him close, her hand on the back of his head, pressing him against her chest where he could hear her heartbeat, steady and real and fighting. "Let's get you to school," she whispered to Noah. "Let's go find your backpack." The afternoon came in pieces. Allara walked Noah through Palmetto Park after he finished his half-day program, moving slowly because walking fast made his heart race. He held her hand and pointed out things, a bird, a cloud, a little girl who reminded him of a friend from school. They sat on a bench near the water, and she helped him adjust his scarf, watching his breathing slow from the exertion. 30 feet away, on another bench, a man sat with his fedora pulled low, watching them with the intensity of someone studying a painting in a museum. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a Blackwell coat that cost more than most cars. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw, pale against olive skin. His eyes were dark and constant. Beside him stood another man, nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Boss, why do we keep coming here?" the man asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucian Caruso did not answer. His eyes did not move from the bench where Allara knelt beside the small boy, adjusting his scarf with a tenderness that belonged to something holy. In 15 years, his Lieutenant Vinny had never seen him sit still like this, watching someone like this. In 15 years, Lucian Caruso had not looked at anything that was not a threat or an asset. This woman was neither. And yet his body was drawn to her like a compass pointing toward something it had forgotten. The evening crashed down at 7:06 p.m. when Allara returned to her apartment building. She was exhausted in the way that sleep could not fix, bone deep, soul deep. She had worked 14 hours. She had eaten 3 times, Noah's leftover oatmeal, a banana from the Blackwell kitchen, and a cup of black coffee. She had $5 in her wallet and 12 days left to find $85,000. The hallway smelled like mold and microwaved fish. As she reached her door, a shadow detached itself from the darkness of the stairwell. Robert Hargrove. Her landlord. A man in his 60s with yellowish teeth and the kind of hands that lingered too long on door frames. "Evening, Allara," he said, his voice like gravel soaked in oil. He held up a crumpled piece of paper, holding it like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Got something here you need to see." Allara's stomach dropped. She knew what the paper was before she opened it. A foreclosure notice. Dated 3 days ago. The building was being seized by the bank. Everyone had 30 days to vacate. "Rent is due tomorrow," Robert continued, stepping closer. "But I'm thinking we could work something out." His eyes moved down her body, lingering in ways that made her skin separate from her bones. His hand reached out, and she felt his fingers brush the hair at her temple. She stepped backward, her key fumbling in the lock. "I'll have it by Friday," she said, her voice steady only because she had learned to hide her terror. "I promise." "Friday might be too late for me to help you stay," he said, and the smile on his face was the smile of a man who knew he had her trapped. "But we could arrange something sooner. A private conversation. You and me. My office." Allara turned the key, slipped through the door, and locked it behind her. She could hear him laughing in the hallway, the sound fading as he descended the stairs. Her converted closet bedroom was exactly as she had left it. Her entire life fit in 2 cardboard boxes, clothes, documents, a photo of her mother who had died when Allara was 19, a book of pressed flowers from a garden she no longer lived near. She sank down on her mattress and pulled her phone from her pocket. 47 unread messages. All from the hospital. All about Noah's surgery deposit. $85,000. Due in 12 days. She had $5. The rain started outside, a sound like the sky was breaking apart. It fell on Miami in gray sheets, on the converted closets and the 5-story mansions and the men in black cars who were still searching for a stranger who had pulled them from burning metal at midnight. And Allara Chen sat in the darkness, and she did not cry, because her tears had dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus 3 years ago, and all that remained was the hollow space where hope used to live. The rain came like a curse that could not be lifted, falling on Miami in sheets so thick you could not see the streetlights anymore. Neon signs bled through the water, pink, blue, red, their colors distorted into something that looked like a bruise spreading across the night sky. At Rose's diner, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a sound like a machine counting down to something terrible. The black and white checkered floor reflected those lights back up, doubled and endless, and the red vinyl booths were cracked in 100 places, each crack holding the story of someone else's small tragedy. Allara sat in the corner booth with her hands wrapped around a single cup of coffee. $1.50. She had done the math 3 times because doing math made it feel like she had some kind of control, like if the numbers added up correctly, maybe her life would too. The coffee was lukewarm by now, but she did not drink it. She just held it. Margie, the waitress who had worked at Rose's for longer than anyone could remember, refilled the cup without asking. She was a woman in her 60s with dyed red hair and the kind of tired eyes that came from knowing too much about other people's suffering. "You look dead on your feet, honey," Margie said, and her voice was not unkind. Allara turned the page in her notebook. Noah's medication schedule. 2 inhalers in the morning. 1 at noon. 1 in the evening. The nitroglycerine tablet in her pocket at all times, just in case. Heart surgery in 12 days. $85,000. She had written it down so many times the numbers had stopped looking real. Just 12 more days, Allara whispered, the words meant only for herself. Outside, the night split open. The sound came first, a scream of rubber on asphalt, then the deafening crash of metal hitting concrete, the kind of sound that breaks something in your chest even if it is happening blocks away. The windows of Rose's diner rattled in their frames. Coffee sloshed across the red vinyl. Margie dropped the pot. Everyone in the diner froze, heads turning toward the street like prey that had heard a predator's roar. Allara saw it through the rain-streaked glass. 3 blocks down, a black luxury sedan, the kind that cost more than everything she would ever own, wrapped around a concrete barrier like a piece of crumpled paper. The front end was crushed inward. Smoke rose from the engine block. And then, the worst part, the first flicker of orange light dancing across the metal. Fire! Allara moved before she could think. Her body had learned, over months of caring for Noah, that thinking slowed you down. Thinking made you hesitate. She grabbed her jacket, ran for the door. Margie called after her? Honey, no, wait for, but Allara was already gone, already running into the November rain. The cold hit her like a slap across the face. Her clothes soaked through in seconds, clinging to her skin, and the rain was so heavy it felt like drowning while still breathing. Her shoes splashed through puddles that reflected the diner's light, then darker puddles, then no light at all. The street narrowed. The buildings on either side grew taller and older, their windows dark. She could hear the sound of the fire now, a roaring hiss that made her ears ring. The sedan was worse up close. The hood had buckled upward. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks surrounding a perfect hole where something, or someone, had hit hard. The driver's side door hung open at an angle. Inside, the shadows were orange and black, and the heat from the flames made the air shimmer and pulse. She could smell burning rubber, burning metal, burning something else, something like hair. Allara grabbed the door frame. The heat singed her eyebrows. Pain flared across her palms where she gripped the hot metal, but pain was information, and information was useful. The man inside was slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious, his face turned away from her. Blood tracked down from a cut above his left eye. His suit was torn, expensive fabric dark with blood. His watch, a gold watch that cost more than a year of her rent, hung loose on his wrist. She did not see power. She did not see danger. She saw someone dying. Allara hooked her arms under his shoulders. His body was heavy, dead weight, and for a moment she thought she could not do this, thought she was not strong enough. But Noah weighed something too, and she had carried him down hallways, had lifted him in and out of chairs, had held him through chest pain that made him scream. Her arms knew what it was to hold something precious. She pulled. The man did not wake. His head lolled backward. She dragged him forward, inch by inch, his expensive shoes scraping the interior of the sedan. The fire spread along the passenger seat, consuming fabric and foam. Another few seconds and it would reach the gas tank. Another few seconds and this man would be burning. One last pull, and his body slid onto the wet pavement. Allara checked his pulse, present, alive, strong, and then she ran. The sirens were approaching. Red and blue lights bloomed in the distance, painting the rain in emergency colors. Allara ran back the way she had come, away from the crash, away from the questions that would follow, away from the police who could trace her name and find the foreclosure notice and discover that she was nobody, just a girl with $5 in her pocket and a dead mother and a 6-year-old who needed surgery she could not afford. The rain washed some of the soot from her hands but not all of it. Some stains, she would learn, do not wash away. 3 blocks away, she ducked into an alley between 2 shuttered storefronts and stood with her back against the brick, breathing hard, her burned palms stinging in the cold. The sirens grew louder, passed the alley, continued toward the crash site. She waited until the sound faded into the distance, then stepped back onto the street and started walking toward home, her clothes dripping, her heart pounding with the terrible knowledge that she had done something that could not be undone. What she did not know was that the man in the sedan was Lucian Caruso, and that his brakes had been cut by someone who wanted him dead, and that the only thing standing between him and a grave was a woman who had every reason to keep walking. What she did not know was that Vinny and Nino were already at Miami General Hospital, both of them lean and scarred, standing over their boss as a doctor wrapped his ribs. When the doctor left, Vinny pulled a leather wallet from the evidence bag and opened it. His face went white. "Boss," Vinny said, his voice careful. "The paramedics found your identification. The police know who you are. They're trying to figure out what happened." Lucian's eyes were closed. His voice, when he spoke, was rough, scraped by smoke. The brakes? Cat. Professional job. Someone wanted you gone, and they wanted it to look like an accident. Lucian was silent for a long moment. The hospital machines beeped around him, measuring his pulse, his oxygen, his heartbeat. Outside his window, Miami sprawled in its usual chaos, traffic, tourists, people living lives that had no idea how close they were to violence every single moment. The woman, Lucian said finally. Who pulled me out? Vinny hesitated. That hesitation meant something bad. Witnesses said a girl got to you before the fire spread. Young, thin, dark hair. She was gone before paramedics arrived. We're looking for her now, but there's not much to go on. In the hallway outside, Nino leaned against the wall and made a phone call. Yeah, I don't know yet. Boss wants to find her. Vinny's pulling traffic cameras. He listened for a moment. No. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask anything. He just closed his eyes and went quiet. You know what that means. On the other end of the line, Marco, Lucian's oldest lieutenant, understood perfectly. When the boss went quiet, people died. The only question was who. The next morning, November rain still falling, the Blackwell mansion woke to the smell of eggs and toast. Allara moved through the kitchen with hands wrapped in white gauze, the burns underneath throbbing with every movement. She had not slept. She had sat on her mattress in the converted closet and held her burned palms and thought about the man's pulse beneath her fingers, still beating, still alive. Noah shuffled into the kitchen in his Spider-Man pajamas, his face still soft with sleep. He was 6 years old and beautiful in the way that broken things sometimes are, like something that had survived fire and come out stronger. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's distant eyes, his father who had left before Noah was born, who had taken one look at a child with a congenital heart condition and decided he had somewhere else to be. Good morning, sweet boy, Allara said, and she set a plate of eggs in front of him. Noah looked up at her hands. Miss Allara, you're hurt. Allara pulled her sleeves down over the gauze. Just a little accident, sweetheart. Eat your oatmeal. You said eggs. Eggs, yes, eggs. She was tired. The tiredness was the kind that went down to the bone. Eat whatever you want. Noah ate slowly, methodically, the way children with heart conditions learn to eat, carefully, monitoring their own breathing, aware in some primal way that their bodies were not entirely reliable. Allara sat across from him and drank coffee she did not want and watched the rain streak the kitchen windows. The door opened. Evelyn Blackwell entered like she was entering a stage, all sharp angles and perfect hair, her phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Alara's annual salary. She did not look at Noah. She looked at Allara, and her eyes were the eyes of a predator that had spotted prey. Robert confirmed it, Evelyn said into the phone. We move forward tonight. She hung up without saying goodbye. She turned to Allara, and when she smiled, it was the smile of someone about to deliver something that would feel like the end of the world. Allara, dear, we need to talk about Noah's care. There have been concerns. Alara's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Concerns. The word sat in the air like a loaded gun. Concerns? Allara repeated, her voice steady only through sheer will. Let's discuss it after you take Noah to the park, Evelyn said, her tone suggesting that this was not a request. I think some fresh air would do him good. Don't you? The dismissal was absolute. Allara nodded, set down her cup, and she did not look at Noah even though she could feel him watching her, could feel his small fear sensing something large approaching. The park came at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the rain had not stopped. It fell in a fine mist now, soaking into clothes without the violence of the night before. Noah played on the swings while Allara watched from a nearby bench, her hand still in gauze, her mind dividing itself between watching him and thinking about what Evelyn had meant. Concerns. Lies, obviously. Evelyn wanted something. Evelyn had always wanted something, wanted Noah's trust fund, wanted custody, wanted some proof that she had a son who needed her. The truth was irrelevant. Evelyn had already decided what the truth would be. Noah ran, his small feet splashing through puddles, and then something shifted in his body. His hand went to his chest. His breathing changed, became shallow, rapid, the sound of someone trying to pull air through a straw. Allara was moving before his knees buckled, was across the playground in seconds, was catching him as he went down. "I'm okay," Noah said, but he was not okay. His face was white. His lips had a faint blue tint. Allara felt his pulse, too fast, too thin, a flutter like a bird trapped in a cage. She sat down hard on the wet grass and pulled him into her lap, feeling his small back heaving against her stomach. "Breathe, baby," she whispered. "Just breathe. Look at me. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. His breathing gradually slowed, aligned with hers, synchronizing until his body found its rhythm again. This happened sometimes, not a full attack, not yet a crisis, but a reminder that his heart was a bomb with no ticking, could fail at any moment, could stop without warning or reason. "Better?" Allara asked when his color began to return. Noah nodded against her chest. "I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. I know you are." From the bench behind them, Lucian Caruso watched. His ribs wrapped beneath his black shirt, his eyes still bruised from the crash, his hands in the pockets of a cashmere coat that cost more than Allara made in a year. He had come to the park every day for months, watching this specific 6-year-old on the swings, watching this girl who watched him like he was the most precious thing in her world. He did not know why he had come. He had told himself it was reconnaissance, that he was watching patterns, that someday there would be a reason for this observation. But watching her pull a small boy from the grass, watching her hold him with the kind of gentleness that he had thought was extinct from the world, something inside Lucian's chest moved like a stone being rolled away from a tomb. Vinny gripped his arm. "Boss, what are you doing?" Lucian did not answer. He crossed the playground, his presence making mothers grab their children instinctively, making the air feel heavier, darker. He stopped 3 feet from Allara, who was still on the wet grass, still holding Noah, still completely unaware that a man built from violence and revenge was standing before her. Allara looked up. She saw a tall man in a black coat, his face partially wrapped in bandages, his eyes the color of a storm coming. She did not recognize him. "Is the boy all right?" Lucian asked, and his voice was quiet, almost gentle, the voice of someone learning how to speak to things that were fragile. Allara's hand moved instinctively in front of Noah. "He's fine. We're fine." Noah looked up at the tall man with the bandaged face. Children had a way of seeing through masks. "You're really tall," Noah said. Something broke in Lucian's expression. For just a moment, it broke, and what showed through was old and aching and human. "What's your name, kid?" "Noah. I'm 6. I have a bad heart, but Miss Allara says I'm gonna be okay." Lucian's eyes shifted to Allara, seeing her clearly for the first time without the fog of blood and smoke between them. He saw her exhaustion, the way she held Noah like he was her entire world, the white gauze on her hands, the burns that had come from pulling a stranger from fire. He saw a girl with $5 in her pocket trying to move mountains. "You're his nanny," Lucian said. It was not a question. Allara answered it anyway because fear made people compliant. "Yes." "And you are?" Her voice was careful, measured. "Someone who owes you a debt," Lucian said. Before Allara could ask what he meant, before she could demand answers, Lucian turned and walked away. Vinny and Nino followed, flanking him like black wings. Vinny whispered something, but Lucian did not hear it. He was thinking about the way her hands had felt pulling him from darkness, the way she had not hesitated, the way she had expected nothing in return. That evening, rain still falling, Allara climbed the stairs to her apartment with dread sitting in her stomach like a stone. The hallway was empty when she arrived, but she could feel them before she saw them, Robert Hargrove and Evelyn Blackwell waiting in the shadows near her door. Robert was in his 60s, soft in the places he should have been sharp, his suit wrinkled, his smile predatory. He held a document in one hand, the foreclosure notice, the same one that had been arriving in her mailbox for 3 months. Evelyn stood beside him with a manila folder, her cream suit still immaculate despite the hour. "Time's up, sweetheart," Robert said, and his voice was the voice of someone who had already decided how this would end. "Rent's due and I don't see any money." Allara's key was in her hand, trembling. "I told you Friday." Evelyn stepped forward, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "There won't be a Friday, Allara. We have evidence you've been abusing Noah. Witnesses. Photos. Medical documentation of suspicious bruises. The police will be very interested in pressing charges." The world tilted. Everything solid became liquid. Allara's voice came out as barely a whisper. "That's a lie. I would never." Robert laughed. "Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what we can prove. And we can prove it very well." Evelyn opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Allara saw them and felt her knees weaken. They were photos of Noah with his chest scars from his cardiac monitoring leads, and someone had circled them in red pen. Someone had written notes. Someone had turned evidence of medical care into evidence of abuse. "You can make this easy," Robert said, "or you can make this impossible. Sign over temporary custody to Evelyn. Leave Miami. And we'll forget this ever happened. No charges, no trial, no prison time." Allara's voice broke. "Noah isn't yours to trade. He's a child." Robert grabbed her arm. His fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. "You've got until tomorrow morning, sweetheart. After that, the police come knocking. And everybody knows what people in prison do to women who hurt children." They left, their footsteps echoing down the hallway, and Allara stood frozen with her key in one hand and her crumpled life in the other. She sank down onto her doorstep, and for the first time in years, she began to cry. Not quiet tears. Not private tears. But the kind of crying that came from knowing that you had fought as hard as you could and it was not enough, would never be enough. Her phone was in her hand before she even thought about it. The hospital automated system answered on the first ring. Surgery deposit of $85,000 required in 11 days. She had $5. But what Allara did not know was that Lucian Caruso had already sent Vinny and Nino to watch her apartment building, that they had documented every interaction, every threat, every moment of Robert Hargrove's predatory hand on her arm. What she did not know was that she had just pulled the wrong man from that fire, if wrong was even the right word. She had pulled the kind of man who had spent 15 years learning how to dismantle other people's empires. She had pulled someone who was about to make Robert Hargrove regret he was ever born. The fire escape was ice under her palms. Metal, rusted, slick with November rain that fell in sheets across Miami, soaking through Allara Chen's thin jacket, plastering her dark hair to her face in strands that stuck to her cheeks like seaweed. For stories below, the street was empty. 3 in the morning. The kind of hour when only the desperate and the broken were still awake. She sat on the cold metal grating, her knees pulled to her chest, her whole body trembling. Not from the cold. From the weight of knowing that you had fought as hard as you could and it was not enough. Would never be enough. In her pocket, a phone. In her bank account, $5. In the hospital downtown, a 6-year-old boy with a heart that did not work right, and in 11 days, an impossible deadline. $85,000. She had 5. Robert Hargrove's words were still crawling across her skin like insects. Sign over custody. Leave Miami. Or watch the police arrive with handcuffs and lies so carefully constructed that the truth could not find its way out. Evelyn Blackwell, Noah's own mother, had forged documents. Medical records transformed into evidence of abuse. The network of their cruelty was so tight, so deliberate, that Allara could not see a way through. The rain fell harder. Her fingers went numb. She thought about what happened in prison to women who hurt children. The things people did. The sounds they made. She thought about Noah waking up in the morning and asking where she had gone. She thought about her mother, buried 5 years now in a cemetery she could not afford to visit. Another person she had failed. The railing was slick. Her palms were steady enough to grip it. Then her phone buzzed. Just that. A small vibration in her pocket. She almost ignored it. Almost didn't reach down. But her hands moved on their own, muscle memory from years of checking messages that never came, of hoping for news that never arrived. A text from Noah. Sent hours ago when she had been sitting in that apartment hallway with her key in one hand and her destroyed life in the other, too shattered to see her phone light up. Miss Allara, you're my favorite person in the whole world. She read it once. Twice. 3 times until the words stopped blurring. Favorite person. Allara climbed back inside the apartment. Her hand shook as she locked the fire escape door. She didn't cry. Her tears had dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus years ago, somewhere between leaving her family and arriving at the place where she had become nobody. But something shifted in her chest. A small, fragile thing. Not hope. Not yet. Just a refusal to disappear. She sat on her bed and texted back, 3 words, "You're my favorite too." Across Miami, in a penthouse office that overlooked the glittering sprawl of the city like a man surveying a kingdom, Lucian Caruso stood at the window with a scotch in his hand. The glass was warm from his grip. Vinny and Nino stood before his desk, their suits identical, their expressions grim, their folders thick with the anatomy of human corruption. Vinny spoke first. His voice was steady, professional, the way a general might brief his commander on enemy positions before a war. Robert Hargrove has been running a housing scam for 8 years, boss. We've got bank statements showing $73,000 in extortion payments from his tenants. Forged documents. Recordings of him threatening women. We found testimony from 8 other victims. 8. He's been doing this for nearly a decade and nobody stopped him. Nino opened a second folder. Photographs of Evelyn Blackwell at galas, at charity events, wearing designer clothes that cost more than a year of Allara's salary. Evelyn Blackwell, Nino said, embezzled $600,000 from her late husband's estate. The plan was to pin it on the nanny, destroy her credibility, claim emergency custody of the child for safety reasons, and access the boy's trust fund. We're talking about $250,000 in inheritance sitting in Noah's name. They were going to steal it and disappear. Lucian didn't move. His hand didn't tighten on the glass. But something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest, the way a blade stirs through still water. Where are they? His voice was ice. Solid, unbreakable ice. Hargrove's at his office downtown, Vinny said. Probably celebrating. He sent Allara an ultimatum for tomorrow morning. Evelyn's at a charity gala right now. Westmore Hotel Ballroom. Live coverage. She's giving a speech about children's welfare protection. Very touching performance. Lucian's mouth moved into something that might have been a smile but wasn't. Let them smile one last time. He set down his scotch. Buttoned his suit jacket. Straightened his cufflinks. When he looked up, his eyes were different. Something ancient and lethal lived in them now. 12 men, he said. Clean. Silent. No police. Not yet. I want them to have time to understand what's happening to them. I want them to feel it coming. Vinny nodded and left to make calls. Nino remained. He had worked for Lucian for 9 years and had learned to read the small silences between his words. The girl, Nino said. It wasn't a question. The girl is going to walk away from this with her head held high, Lucian said. And she is never going to know that she pulled the right man from that fire. The exact right man. The only man in this city who could make them pay. The office building where Robert Hargrove kept his predatory operation was 40 stories of glass and steel, all sharp edges and the kind of architecture that announced money the way a weapon announces power. At 4 in the morning, the lobby was dead. No witnesses. No hesitation. 12 men moved like ghosts through the parking structure, up the stairwell, down the hallway. They moved the way men move when they are very good at their work and have done it many times before. Black suits. Earpieces. The kind of efficiency that comes from absolute discipline. Hargrove's office was on the 32nd floor. Corner views. Mahogany desk. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with the smell of money and something else. Something rotten underneath, the way corpses smell even when they are still breathing. Robert Hargrove sat behind his desk, reviewing property documents, probably thinking about how he had broken the nanny, how easy she had been, how terrified she had looked when he explained what happened to women in prison. He was smiling when they breached the door. The smile died when he saw them. 12 men in black, spreading through his office like a tide, blocking every exit. And then, stepping from the back of the group, Lucian Caruso himself. 6'2". Tailored suit worth more than Hargrove's monthly salary. Dark eyes that had seen things that broke other men. Hargrove tried to run. They didn't let him. They pressed him back into his chair with the kind of casual strength that made it clear resistance was not an option. Vinny dropped the folders onto his desk. Bank statements. Recorded phone calls. Testimony from the 8 women, each signature notarized, legal, devastating. Photographs. Dates. Times. The entire architecture of his cruelty laid bare. You don't know who you're messing with, Robert tried. His voice cracked on the second syllable. I have connections. I have lawyers. I have? You have nothing, Lucian said. His voice was like thunder trapped in a room. You have less than nothing. You have a choice. And the choice is whether you come quietly or whether my men carry you out. Hargrove's bladder failed. They all heard it. The wet stain spreading across his pants. His face went grey. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a cornered animal, the kind that makes sounds when it realizes the trap is closed and there is no escape. Please, he whispered. I didn't know she was yours. I swear I didn't know. She's not mine, Lucian said quietly. She's not anyone's. That's what you parasites never understand. Some people are their own. And you tried to break that. You tried to make her small enough to fit inside your hands. He nodded to Vinny and Nino. They moved forward. Robert screamed. He screamed the way predators scream when they realize the predator they've been circling is actually a lion, and the lion was hungry, and the game was over. They dragged him out. 8 hours away, across the city, the Westmore Hotel ballroom was all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. 2,000 people in designer clothes, all of them smiling, all of them taking photographs of the woman on stage. Evelyn Blackwell was beautiful in the way that money makes possible. Blonde hair, expensive cut. A gown that cost more than Allara earned in 6 months, pale blue silk that made her look like someone who had never struggled, never suffered, never had to count dollars instead of spending them. Children are our future, she was saying, her voice warm and practiced and absolutely genuine in its performance. And it is our responsibility as a community to protect them from the predatory forces that would exploit their vulnerability. I have seen it myself. I have watched it. And today I am proud to announce a new foundation, the Blackwell Children's Protection Fund, with initial funding of $250,000. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. This was her moment. This was her triumph. She had orchestrated it all perfectly. The nanny would be destroyed. Noah would be hers. The inheritance would be hers. Everything would be exactly as she designed it. Then the ballroom doors opened. Federal agents in dark suits moved through the crowd with the kind of purpose that made people understand, without words, that something terrible was about to happen. They moved toward the stage. Toward her. For a moment, Evelyn stood frozen. Then she understood. She tried to smile, as if this was part of the show, some kind of surprise performance. But the smile broke when the first agent reached the stage. "Evelyn Catherine Blackwell," the agent said, his voice calm and professional and absolutely relentless, "you are under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and child endangerment." The words hit like bullets. Like a blade slicing through everything she had built. She screamed then. All of her carefully constructed elegance collapsed like a building in an earthquake. She screamed at the cameras, "You don't understand. That girl was trying to steal my son. She was abusing him. She was." But the agents had the forged documents. They had the medical records that she had altered. They had the bank transfers. They had everything. They showed it on the screens around the ballroom. Evelyn's own handwriting. Her own signature. Her own lies, displayed for 2,000 witnesses and every camera broadcasting live to Miami News. Her friend stepped back. People she had known for decades moved away from her like she was contagious. The cameras captured it all. The disgrace. The terror. The moment when power collapsed into nothing. They read her rights as they led her away, her screaming echoing through the ballroom, through the hotel, through the city itself. The footage went viral in 40 minutes. By noon, 5 million people had seen it. By evening, every news outlet in the country was running the story. The woman who had tried to steal her son's inheritance. The woman who had forged medical abuse documents. The woman who had built a children's protection foundation while systematically destroying a child. Federal prison, 40 years. That was Robert Hargrove's fate. His property seized. His victims compensated from the accounts he had stolen from. His name became synonymous with predation, with exploitation, with the kind of man who hid behind paperwork and legal threats and borrowed authority. The news called him a housing predator who operated for nearly a decade in plain sight. Evelyn Blackwell received 25 years for embezzlement and fraud. Her charity stripped away. Her assets liquidated. Her name erased from every foundation, every board, every place where she had written herself into history. But the justice was not death. Death would have been too quick, too easy, too merciful. This was something worse. This was systematic destruction. This was watching everything you built collapse in real time. This was knowing that you would spend the next quarter century locked in a cell, watching the world forget you. Allara never knew that Lucian orchestrated any of it. She never knew about the men watching her apartment building, about the folders thick with evidence, about the lieutenant named Vinny who recorded Robert's voice threatening 8 other women with such clarity that a jury would weep. What she knew was that she woke up, and Noah was still hers. She knew that federal agents had arrived, not for her, but for the people who had tried to destroy her. She knew that her landlord was arrested on the 11 o'clock news, his face grey with terror, his hands shaking as they led him out. She knew that Evelyn Blackwell's public humiliation was complete and total and irreversible. She knew that somewhere in this city, a man had decided that her life was worth saving. The news anchor's voice crackled through the apartment's cheap speakers at 7:43 in the morning. Robert Hargrove's mugshot filled the screen, grey-faced, trembling, his hands cuffed behind his back as federal agents led him toward a black SUV. Allara Chen sat on her mattress, her phone trembling in her palms, watching her landlord's world collapse in real time. Housing predator arrested after a decade-long investigation, the anchor said. Authorities allege Hargrove exploited at least 12 vulnerable tenants, using threats of eviction as leverage for sexual favors and unpaid labor. Allara's breath came in shallow gasps. She did not understand. One moment she was drowning, the next moment something pulled her to the surface, and she could not explain how or why. The second news segment showed Evelyn Blackwell being led out of Miami General Hospital in handcuffs, her designer suit wrinkled, her blonde hair unwashed, her face streaked with tears. Embezzlement, fraud, falsification of medical records, the anchor announced. The Blackwell family's charity foundation is being investigated for diverting funds meant for sick children into private accounts. Allara pressed her forehead against the cold phone screen. This woman had written the lies. This woman had signed the false documents claiming abuse. This woman had almost taken Noah away. A knock at her door sent ice through her veins. She opened it to find a man she had never seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than 3 months of her rent. His name was Vinny, though she would not learn that until much later. His eyes were kind in a way that did not match his appearance. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice steady like gravel under tires. "Someone wants you to have this." He extended an envelope. His hands were scarred, the kind of scars that told stories Allara did not want to know. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a cashier's check made out to Miami General Hospital. $85,000. The memo line read, "For Allara Chen's surgical procedure." Beneath the check was a note written in strong, confident handwriting. The letters were angular and precise, like a man who made decisions with the same hand that wrote his name. For the boy. No strings. No debt. You saved a life. Let me return the favor. No signature. Who? Allara's voice fractured like dropped glass. Who sent this? Vinny was already turning away, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Someone who doesn't forget, he said without looking back. Allara stood in her doorway for 7 minutes, the check in her trembling hands, unable to move. The morning sun cut through the shabby hallway, illuminating dust particles that floated like ghosts. Her mind moved in circles, connecting things she had not allowed herself to connect until this moment. The man in the park. The one she had seen watching Noah while they sat on the bench, the man with the scar running from his eye to his cheekbone, the man whose body moved like controlled violence held back by invisible chains. She had felt his gaze 100 times. She had never understood why someone so clearly powerful, so clearly dangerous, would waste time watching a broken woman and a sick child. She called the hospital at 8:17 in the morning. The administrative assistant's voice shifted when Allara provided the check number. "Ms. Chen, this is real. This is completely real. We can schedule Noah's surgery for next week. Monday, if you'd like. The anesthesiologist will need." Allara stopped listening. She was crying too hard to hear words. The waiting room at Miami General Hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Allara sat in a plastic chair that had been sat in by 10,000 worried people before her, and she prayed to God she was not sure she believed in. Her hands were folded so tightly her fingernails drew blood from her palms. 6 hours passed like 6 years. A surgeon emerged through the double doors, still wearing his surgical mask around his neck. His name was Dr. Morrison, and his eyes held relief. "The surgery was successful," he said. "His heart is beating strong. The valve replacement took perfectly. He'll need recovery time, but Noah is going to be okay. He's going to have a normal life." Allara collapsed. Her body simply ceased to hold itself upright. She folded into her own lap and sobbed so hard that nurses came to check her pulse, concerned she was having a cardiac event of her own. 2 weeks later, Noah came home. His scar was a thin red line down the center of his small chest, like a zipper someone had drawn closed to keep his courage inside. His energy had returned. The gray pallor that had lived under his skin for 6 years was gone. His laugh, that sound Allara had heard so rarely, came back. He ran through the apartment at full speed, his small feet pounding the floor like a rabbit's heartbeat. "Vivi, Vivi, look how fast I am now," he shouted. He had never been able to run. His heart had never let him. Allara watched him move through the rooms and thought about the cashier's check. She thought about Robert Hargreaves' face on the news. She thought about Evelyn Blackwell's humiliation playing out on every channel. And she thought about the man in the park, the one with eyes that burned like charcoal, the one who moved like a ghost in an expensive suit. She began asking careful questions. To other tenants in the building. To people at the grocery store. To the librarian who sometimes saw her reading in the public library during her 1 free hour each week. Whispers. Always whispers. Never confirmation. But the name that kept surfacing was impossible. Lucian Caruso. The Mafia boss. The man they said controlled half the drug trade in Miami and half the money laundering operations in 3 states. The man who had been nearly killed in a car crash 3 weeks ago on a rainy November night when someone pulled him from a burning vehicle and disappeared before anyone could thank her. She put the pieces together like a puzzle she did not want to complete. The timing. The money. The sudden arrests. The way Vinny had moved with the kind of confidence that came from years of giving orders and watching them obeyed. A Mafia boss had saved her life. A criminal had given her child the surgery that saved his heart. A man built on violence had chosen mercy. She did not know what to do with this knowledge. It terrified her. It awed her. It changed something fundamental in the way she understood the world. Across the city, in an office on the 67th floor of a building that gleamed like black glass, Lucian Caruso received an update from Vinny at 3:15 in the afternoon. The boy's recovering. Doctors say he's going to have a full life, Vinny reported, standing with his hands folded in front of him, his voice steady. The nanny's been asking questions. People at the library, the grocery store. She's putting it together. Lucian stared out the floor-to-ceiling window at Miami sprawling below him like a city built on secrets. His scar caught the afternoon light. Let her ask, he said quietly. She earned the truth. He did not tell Vinny that he had watched her every day for 2 years. That he had stood in that park and felt something cold and foreign move in his chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. That pulling her from the burning car had not been an act of gratitude but an act of surrender, the moment when a man built entirely on vengeance had decided that vengeance was not enough. He did not contact her. Not yet. He was not sure he had the right. 1 year later, Miami's skyline glowed gold and pink at sunset. The sky looked like it was burning in slow motion, beautiful and deliberate and inevitable. Allara Chen stood at a penthouse window overlooking the water, her posture straight, her shoulders back, her hands steady. She wore a professional blazer in deep blue, and her hair fell in waves past her shoulders. She looked like a woman who slept 8 hours and ate 3 meals and did not count every penny. She had finished her degree. She had started a non-profit organization called the House of Hope, a foundation that helped families with critically ill children afford treatment they could not otherwise access. She had been interviewed on local news. She had testified before a city council about predatory housing practices. Noah was 7 years old now, healthy, laughing, his color better than she had ever seen it. He attended a private school. He played soccer. He had learned to ride a bicycle. He was a normal boy living a normal life because someone had decided that mercy was more valuable than revenge. Allara had moved into this penthouse 6 months ago. The deed had arrived at her office with no explanation, no name attached to the transfer, just a clean piece of paper saying the apartment was hers. She suspected. But she had never confirmed. Until tonight. A knock at her glass balcony door. Soft. Deliberate. She turned, and her heart stopped. Lucian Caruso stood on her balcony in a black suit, his hands in his pockets, his expression unguarded in a way his men would not recognize. The scar on his face caught the last of the sunset's light. He looked like he had traveled a very long distance to stand in this particular moment. Allara opened the door. The evening breeze moved between them, carrying the salt smell of the ocean and the distant sound of the city breathing below them. "Mr. Caruso," she said. "Lucian," he corrected. "Please." They stood 3 feet apart, the city lights rising behind them like 1,000 fires that had learned to be beautiful. "Was it you?" Allara's voice trembled. "The money, the arrests, this apartment." "Yes." The word fell like a stone into still water. "Why?" she asked. Lucian stepped closer, his movement slow and deliberate. "Because you pulled me from a burning car without knowing who I was. Because you risked your life for a stranger when you had every reason to save yourself. Because I watched you love that boy like he was yours when his own mother saw him as a transaction." He paused, and his voice lowered. "My father was murdered when I was 16. I watched from a closet, too afraid to move. I built an empire on vengeance, told myself it was what he would have wanted. But then I saw you in that park, and I realized he would have wanted me to become someone who protects people like you. Not someone who creates people like Hargrove and Evelyn. Tears filled Allara's eyes. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything, Lucian said. You showed me what my father would have wanted me to become. And loving you has been the only act of vengeance that ever mattered. Loving me, she whispered. From the moment you ran toward that fire instead of away from it. Allara stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met as the sun disappeared below the horizon, two broken people who had found salvation in each other's courage. Some say darkness is permanent. That violence only breeds more violence. But Allara Chen proved them wrong. She did not fight darkness with darkness. She fought it with a love so fierce it burned brighter than any flame. And in doing so, she saved 2 lives that November night, the Mafia boss in the burning car, and the man he could still become. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only love can do that. If this story moved your heart, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to hear that one act of courage can change everything. Subscribe for more stories that prove love is the strongest force in the world. And remember, you never know whose life you'll save when you choose kindness over fear. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.